One of the best birds that I've seen throughout my birding journey in places like India, Colombia, New Guinea, and Costa Rica is the beautiful Wilson's bird of paradise of Western New Guinea. I saw my first Wilson's bird of paradise on the island of Waigeo in Western New Guinea. The island is covered by lush tropical rainforests, and it is in the understory of these rainforests that I saw my first Wilson's bird of paradise. When I first saw the bird, I was like, oh, what a colorful bird this is. The bird is indeed really colorful. It's like a jewel in the dark undergrowth of the rainforest. It has a bald blue head with entirely bare skin on top, and the back is beautiful. The back of the bird has yellow in the front and red at the back. And what strikes me the most about this bird is something very few birders actually see, and that is the breast shield. When the male displays in the tropical rainforest in the understory on a branch, he literally points up towards the sky and literally inflates this beautiful breast shield, which the female sees as a leaf. I saw this in the documentary by David Attenborough. And to the female, the male is like a leaf in the middle of the forest because of his breast shield. And so the female will literally select the best male or the best leaf that she sees and mate with him.
Welcome to the Bird Podcast. I'm Shobha Narayan. With us today is Maitreya Sukumar. Maitreya, that was a fabulous story about the Wilson's bird of paradise. But let's go back to the beginning. I want to know how your birding journey started.
Okay, my birding journey started in 2006 when I was 4 years old. I was given a book on the common birds of the Indian subcontinent by a very good friend of my father's, who is now a very good friend of mine. His name is Ananda Banerjee, and he's the first friend I made in the birding circle. And I used to read this book again and again until I knew it by rote. Soon after that, I got my first pair of binoculars and I started going on walks in the Delhi region along with members of the Delhi Bird Club, who are now, some of them are good friends of mine. And through these walks, I was able to understand the bird life of the Delhi region better and also the myriad range of habitats as well. And so this is how my birding journey started.
Okay. Maitreya was born in 2002. By 2008, his mother Anita Mani says he was hooked. He had read the birding Bible, Birds of the Indian Subcontinent, cover to cover and memorized it. He was participating in bird quizzes. For a young birder, growing up in Delhi is actually a gift. So I asked Maitreya to name some of his favorite birding locations in and around Delhi.
One of the top places that you have to visit in the Delhi region is the Basai wetlands, which is located in the outskirts of the city of Gurgaon, a few kilometers away from Delhi. And it's a beautiful array of flooded fields and wetlands. And this area has had some of the most uncommon species of birds in the Delhi region, which were found pretty easily there. And so in the winter season, this area has a lot of waders and migratory ducks. And the best time to go there is the winter, obviously. And this is one of the best areas to go to.
Okay.
And
please go ahead.
And another good area that you must visit is the Aravali Biodiversity Park in southwestern Delhi. And so this area is essentially a rewilded area of native vegetation. Initially, the area was colonized by an invasive species of plant called Prosopis juliflora from Southern America. But since then, the rewilding efforts being undertaken have given, obviously, the native vegetation has come back to the region, and with it, the bird life. And so, as a result of this native vegetation, the bird life in the Aravali Biodiversity Park is quite good. And some of the most interesting birds I've seen there are some special species of warblers, like the lemon rump warbler, which is a small bird that is usually seen in the Himalayas. And so I've seen one there. And so these are some of the interesting birds that you're likely to encounter there.
The shrub that Maitreya talks about, Prosopis juliflora, is the bane of naturalists. In our Bharatpur episode, you can find out how it came into Rajasthan and what forest officers are doing to remove this invasive species. But back to Maitreya. He has traveled not just to different parts of India, but also in different parts of the world for birding. So I asked him about his favorite birding destinations.
I have many favorite birding areas, and in India, my favorite birding area is definitely the northeast because the elevational range is vast. As you go from 0 meter in the plains of Assam to 4,200 to 4,300 meters in western Arunachal Pradesh. And so, as the elevational range increases from 0 to 4,200 meters, the habitat changes from low-lying wetlands to mid-elevational broadleaf forests to juniper and coniferous forests, and finally to alpine meadows. And so, as the habitat changes, the bird life also changes as well. And another interesting thing about Northeast is that year birding. It gives you a good practice in year birding. And many of the birds in the Northeast, you are likely to hear them before you actually see them. And so, being able to recognize birds by sound before you see them is an essential part of birding in this region, and one which I find extremely fun. And so, in the world, my favorite birding region is definitely Colombia because the diversity of birds there is unparalleled in almost the entire world, and it's probably called the birdiest country in the world. And the habitats range from high altitude grasslands above the tree line called the Paramo, which is so cold that hardly any trees can grow there, to cloud forests, to low altitude rainforests like in the Chocobayo region of western Colombia and the Amazon rainforest, and also the dry deserts of the dry coastal deserts. And so all of these habitats result in a wide variety of bird life, which is and some of the most diverse forms are hummingbirds and tanagers, of which I was able to see quite a few species in 2019 when I went there.
When I asked Maitreya's mother Anita what it was like to raise a bird obsessed child, she laughed. And she said that she and her husband Sukumar always felt that they took working vacations, which involved getting up at 4 a.m., driving for many hours in places without roads to look at birds that were too small for the naked eye, only to come back and collapse at the dinner table. But as a parent, I think it is lucky if your child has discovered a passion, and Maitreya is lucky enough to discover his at age 6. Colombia is a place I've never been to, and so I asked Maitreya about the birds I had read about, the aracaris, the quetzals, the toucans, and of course the tanagers.
You see a lot of tanagers in Colombia. Colombia, like in the cloud forest, especially, like almost like every corner you see tanagers and hummingbirds. So
Yep.
tanagers and hummingbirds are probably the most diverse families of birds in Colombia. I got a lot of species of them in my visit, and also there are a lot of other families like spine-tails, bristle tyrants, quetzals, trogons, to name a few. The list of families is just too vast.
Yeah. And Maitreya, you in your article you talk about the three different regions and how one should go. For example, in Cipriano, you talk about how you should go, and the Paramo. Can you describe a little bit about the experience of birding for those who haven't gone? So, in Colombia.
So basically, in the regions like San Cipriano and the Paramo, these two regions are probably two of the most diverse regions in Colombia. So San Cipriano is an area of lowland rainforest in the Chocobayo region of western Colombia. And so the Chocobayo region is basically an area of forest which extends from Panama to Colombia and then to Ecuador. And so this Chocobayo region is home to a wide variety of birds. And so in San Cipriano, the birds we mainly like to encounter are moths, like the rufous moth, which is seen perching on low-lying branches, and ant birds in plenty. Like the low elevations of Colombia are full of ant birds, and they like to skulk a lot. And ant bird diversity in the low elevations of Colombia is probably one of the highest in the world. And also, a lot of birds have ants in their name. Like I have the word ant in their name, like ant wrens, ant shrikes, and ant birds. And so these birds are probably the most diverse families in the low elevations of San Cipriano. And so San Cipriano also has some other cool birds, like the five-colored barbet, which is so called because it has five colors in the plumage: the red, black, yellow, gray, and also the Sapayoa, which is Sapayoa, Sapayoa, which is an endemic family to Colombia, Panama, and Ecuador. And so it is the only member of its own genus, which is Sapayoa. And this bird is a speciality of San Cipriano, and also quite uncommon as well. And I was lucky to see one in the in my lucky to see one in the first few hours of morning in San Cipriano. And so these are some of the highlights of the San Cipriano region as well. And so the Paramo is a region of high altitude grassland, which is so cold that no trees can grow there. And the Paramo has some cool birds like the Apollina's wren, which is probably one of the rarest birds in Colombia, which is restricted to a very limited elevational distribution range in the Paramo. So climate change could adversely impact this bird, as it has nowhere higher up to go or nowhere lower down to go. And another interesting bird to watch out for is the green bearded helmet crest, which is a species of hummingbird that likes to perch on these flowering bushes in the Paramo.
What about the other non-Indian regions you've been to? You've mentioned you've mentioned two. I think you said Costa Rica as well, right?
Costa Rica.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the birds there? What you liked and what you saw?
So in Costa Rica, Costa Rica was I wanted to go to Costa Rica for a very long time, and finally had the opportunity in June 2014 to go to Costa Rica. And so I went to three main different bioregions of Costa Rica: the Pacific lowlands on the South Pacific slope, which includes the Carrara National Park, then the Central Highlands, the Talamanca Mountains of Colombia, to search for the resplendent quetzal, which is probably one of the best birds I've ever seen, and also the Caribbean slope of Costa Rica, which is also extremely diverse. And so these regions, again, the elevation distribution is vast, from like the lowlands to mid elevations and then to higher up in cloud forests. And so Costa Rica actually was my first experience of neotropical birding. And birding there was extremely fun because almost every single bird I got there was a lifer, which is first time I'm seeing it there. So the resplendent quetzal was definitely top of the list among the best bird I've seen in Costa Rica. But also there were other cool specialities like cool things like in Tapanti National Park, which is the last location that I went to. Within the first few kilometers of the entrance of the park, we managed to encounter a mixed hunting flock of 40 species in Costa Rica. This is not uncommon. Mixed hunting flocks of 40 species in Costa Rica are not very uncommon, given how diverse the country is. And so I noticed that these birds were feeding at different levels of the tree. Some feeding at lower down, some feeding higher down, and all 40 species of them were new for me. All 40 species were lifers. And so that's what made me appreciate the mixed hunting flocks of Costa Rica even more. And that's how I enjoyed my birding experience there.
Closer to home, Maitreya's mother Anita recounts an incident where they stood in the outskirts of Delhi looking through binoculars at a mixed flock of larks so that he could tell them apart. And you know how difficult they are to tell apart. After what seemed like hours, Maitreya spotted the bird that he was looking for, which was the Hume's short-toed lark. But back to Tapanti. I asked Maitreya if it would be a good place to start for someone new to Costa Rica.
Yeah, I would pick that as a place because Tapanti is actually called a birder's challenge because the vegetation is very thick, and sometimes before you see a bird, all you get is just a fleeting glimpse, and it may be just a few minutes before you see the bird again in full detail. And so the challenge of birding in such thickly vegetated habitats is literally what adds to the thrill of forest birding generally. Yes. Not only in Costa Rica, but also in Colombia as well.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about New Guinea, or shall I have my next question was a follow-up to what you just said, is which is the best bird you've seen, but if you want to talk about New Guinea, that would be nice as well.
New Guinea. I visited New Guinea in October 2017, and as literally like a birthday gift for me, I would say, that year. And I visited first the island of Waigeo in Western New Guinea, where I saw the Wilson's Bird of Paradise, and also had to trek very early in the morning through hot, humid, sweaty rainforests to see the Red Bird of Paradise, which is also a speciality of the island, which does its courtship display very high up in trees, and and also did some good snorkeling as well in the coral reefs around Vigo, because Vigo is a island in the Raja Ampat archipelago. And Raja Ampat archipelago is unparalleled in diversity of marine life as well. So I got to experience the best of both worlds, both birds as well as marine life as well.
Wonderful.
And also another region that I went to is the Arfak Mountains. The Arfak Mountains are located on the Vogelkop Peninsula, which is also called the Bird's Head Peninsula because it's shaped like a bird's head. And the Arfak mountain birding is absolutely beautiful, but can be tiring as the treks can sometimes take as one trek which I did on my birthday incidentally took an entire day as we would stop at various locations to see birds, and that adds to the main fun of the birding in the Arfak mountains. And so the Arfaks are also home to some cool birds like the Vogelkop Gardner, which is a bowerbird, which builds a beautiful hut-like bower decorated with myriad items like flowers, berries, mosquito coils, rings, and also there's this other bird called as the black sicklebill, which is a huge bird of paradise, which literally selects a branch for displaying and literally leans on the branch, and while he displays, his wing feathers touch against the base of his tail and make a sort of non-vocal sound. He doesn't open his bill. He just opens his, brushes his wing feathers against his tail and creates a non-vocal sound which sounds like a distant machine gun, a distant knocking.
I've seen that on Instagram. So this is not like the barbet, which makes the sound without opening the mouth.
Barbets also are non-vocal because barbets, when they call, they only the neck feathers move in a certain the neck feathers move. They don't open their bills.
Correct.
The neck feathers move only when they call. It's non-vocal as well.
Yeah.
But here was a non-vocal sound using the wings and the tail, the base of the tail.
That's interesting. Yeah. So which is the best bird you've seen, Maitreya?
It's a very tough question to answer. There's the best bird that I have seen. One of the best birds I have seen is the Alto Pisones tapaculo of Colombia, which is a black bird which likes to skulk in dense undergrowth of cloud forests. And so it was the best bird I had seen because it had only been recently described to science then. Only recently described to science. And the thrill of actually seeing it just a few meters away from me without actually having to need any binoculars, like within touching distance it was another factor which added to the real thrill of sighting this Alto Pisones tapaculo. And the bird is extremely skulking like most tapaculos, this sighting actually rates very high among the best birds I have seen. So this is one of the best birds I've seen so far, and there are many of them.
Yeah, I can imagine. From your articles, I can imagine. We all have soft spots for certain birds. I mean, these are favorites that we have. Do you have any favorite birds, either in India or in your trips?
No.
Or species?
Just too many great birds. I can't pick a favorite.
Yeah. And let's move to issues. With bird life, according to you, what is the main threat that is plaguing bird life in India or globally?
Now, as you all know, it's habitat destruction. But most people tend to think of habitat destruction as intrusions or roads cutting through protected areas. One also needs to look at conservation outside protected areas as well. Take, for example, the Basai wetlands located in Gurgaon. And so this area, which is once large areas of wetland, which are once wetland and flooded fields and agricultural fields, have now all been swallowed up by the spread by urban spread. Like Gurgaon is threatening to swallow up the entire wetland as it grows. And so what was once agricultural fields is now apartment complexes. And so we are likely to lose this area within the next few years, I would say. And it's actually quite sad because some of the uncommon species of the Delhi region which have actually been found easily there. And so another wetland which is also threatened by habitat destruction is an area called as Mandoti, which is a few kilometers away from Basai near Rohtak. And so this area is also had a very uncommon visitor in the form of a red-breasted merganser, which arrived in December 2020, which is a duck, which is a very uncommon diving duck, which dives for fish in the water, dives for fish. And this bird was a vagrant to India. And this sighting over here was probably the only third ever sighting for India. And so this area is threatened by factories and warehouses that are threatening to swallow the entire wetland up. So that's also we need to look at a strategy for conservation of these unprotected wetlands unprotected wetlands in India, as they face a lot of threats. And one of the and also some of the best bird life is not to be found within protected areas. It's found on the outside of protected areas and on the fringes of protected areas as well.
Which aspect of bird behavior or ecology interests you the most, Maitreya?
So I'm sticking with behavior. And one aspect of bird behavior that really interests me is one I briefly explained upon earlier, which is mixed hunting flocks. And so the mixed hunting flocks, apart from Colombia and Costa Rica, I have seen them in Northeast India as well. And so Northeast India is where some of the best mixed hunting flocks in India can be seen. And they are found at varying levels of the forest, ranging from high canopies to mid canopy and even to bamboo as well. And for example, if you take a mixed hunting flock at 1,200 meters in Arunachal, or Bhutan, you get to see sultan tit, which is a large tit species which is black and yellow. And so these birds act as the leaders of the flock, means they are usually the first bird you will see when you encounter a flock. And so these birds are generally leaders of flock, are generally very vocal, and also they call they are loud and nasal as well in terms of their calls. And so they are usually among the bolder birds of the flock as well. And so another interesting aspect is that each bird in the mixed hunting flock, each species, I would say, adopts a different hunting strategy. For example, in the mixed hunting flock, I say Northeast again, like the laughing thrushes are leaf gleaners, means they snatch food from leaves. And while birds like the drongos and trogons act as salliers, which means they catch insects in flight flushed out by the others. Like they catch like the insects in midair and almost like twist through the branches like a flycatcher through in flight, and then come back on the perch and eat the insect up. And so also and also other birds like nuthatches, they feed along branches, like they creep slowly along branches to feed for insects. So each bird adopts different feeding strategies in a mixed hunting flock so as to avoid competition. And so as to avoid competition. And so this is a very interesting example of mixed hunting flocks as well. Apart from providing many more eyes and ears so as to avoid predation by birds like owlets.
So, which is the bird that you had to work the hardest for?
The one bird that I had to work the hardest for is a bird that I saw in Bhutan called the watchtogan. So watchtogan, in many people's eyes, is the emblematic bird of the Eastern Himalaya. So this watchtogan is the largest of the togan family in India, and so it generally it likes cloud forests, dense cloud forests, with dense misty cloud forests and mist with a lot of mist. So we were in March 2017. We were in an area called Yongkhola, Yonghkhola, in eastern Bhutan, looking for this bird. So we stopped the first site to look for the bird, and the weather was still cloudy. It was still perfect for trogon, and we were hearing the call, but we were not able to see it as the bird was calling far off. So we continued. During our search, we got to see a lot of cool birds like the Satyr tragopan, which is a beautifully colored pheasant with a blue face and a red breast. The yellow-rumped honeyguide, which is also quite a localized bird of the Eastern Himalayas, which has a grey and yellow body with a yellow face and also the elusive Sikkim wedge-billed babbler, which is a small, large, medium-sized skulking bird with a long bill and a black face, and a bird which I really wanted to see as well. It was a really good bird which I really wanted to see, and also just towards the end of the day, it was in the evening, and the weather started to turn very cloudy, very misty, and there was the clouds are threatening to open, the skies are threatening to open up any instant. And so I was thinking, it's just perfect trogon weather, and suddenly out of nowhere, I just look at a branch, see a beautiful male watchtogan in the open, and I'm saying, oh my gosh, I'm seeing a watchtogan in the open. Saying, wow, finally I'm seeing the watchtogan. And we were looking at this beautiful maroon and pink male when we finally saw the female, the female, which is yellow and brown in color, joined in. and we spent a few minutes looking at a pair of watchtower just perched above us. And then after a few minutes, the pair decided to fly off. And really, it was a perfect way of ending the day, literally. And so it was one of those unique days in the East Himalayas when you, for example, if you're in Bhutan or Western Arunachal, you can get, if you're very very lucky, that is, you can get birds like tragopans. For example, in Bhutan, if you get you'll get Satyr tragopan, and Western Arunachal you get Temminck's tragopan. And nuthatches, I saw beautiful nuthatches well before this. A male adult beautiful nuthatch feeding on a branch, which is the largest of the nuthatches in India, and also a bird which I really wanted to see. Yellow-rumped honeyguide, which is also yellow-rumped honeyguide, Sikkim vegetable babbler, and of course trogon. So a combination of 6 different birds in a single day, which is what I got. You can get if you're extremely lucky. So I was lucky to have got the combination of 6 different birds in a single day, and this is what makes my sighting of watch trogon extremely memorable. And this is probably something that will remain with me for a very long time.
Okay, on that line, what is the craziest thing that you had to do while birding?
This a day before this in Bhutan, and I had heard the call of a bird which had probably regarded which had really troubled me in Arunachal Pradesh, white gorgeted flycatcher. So this bird this flycatcher is not like a usual red-breasted flycatcher wintering, which like perches in the open more frequently. This is a proper skulking flycatcher of middle elevational forests, and so this bird is almost subterranean. This bird actually perches very close to the ground, and as I was about to discover, unless you are at eye level with this bird, unless you are at eye level with this bird, you cannot actually get a good view of it. So a friend of mine who was with me told me, go down there, sit on the stone in the middle of the gully, and wait for the bird to come. And so I had was instructed to sit on a stone, sit on a big rock in the middle of the dull, dark gully. And all around me, I could hear the calls of the Eastern Himalayas, the calls of a collared owlet singing nearby, the calls of a Satyr tragopan calling nearby, and the calls and so many other calls around me. And just after a few minutes, I see a movement in the gully, and then I look up, and there it is, white gorgeted flycatcher in the open, singing and I just think, oh my god, finally I get to see this super skulker of among flycatchers. And so it was finally I really had to finally get this white gorgeted flycatcher out of my list. And so I was really relieved that I finally got to see probably the most elusive of all flycatchers in Northeast India.
Fantastic. How many birds
species? That was the craziest thing I had to do for a flycatcher, I would say. Literally go at the level of the bird, almost subterranean.
And sit there and wait.
Yes.
And was Shashank Dalvi with you on that trip?
Yes, he was with me.
So, how many species have you seen till now, Maitreya? Approximately.
The number in India, I have seen approximately India has seen 870 species. While in the world, I would say around. Still not very accurate, I would say, but I still have to dig up those lists on eBird, I would say, to get it's around 2,500 to 3,000 odd species.
Okay, it's close enough. My last question is: can you recommend some good books about birds that young naturalists, birders would benefit from, or even everybody would benefit from?
So one book that I book that I would really recommend. One book that I would really recommend too for all young birders and people interested in nature is not about Indian birds. It's about something else. It's called Owls of the Eastern Ice, by a wildlife biologist called as Jonathan C. Slot, who talks about, in this book, he talks about his quest to find and conserve through his research the world's largest owl, which is the Blakiston's fish owl of Russia. And so this book literally was probably the best book I had read last year, because it talks about because this book talks about the author's efforts to uncover and understand the ecology of this bird better, but also his vivid descriptions of how the bird's habitat needs are extremely specific. For example, these fish owls prefer old growth forests near streams, and the reason why they do that is because for example, take a stream. When a small tree falls, there's not much disturbance, but when a larger tree falls, it disturbs the flow of water around it, and so creating this tapestry of aquatic ecosystems, shallow pools, deeper channels, in which the owl's prey species like salmon and trout specifically gather. And so basically, these owls gather where the fishing is good. And so the habitat needs of the owl when it comes to nesting are also extremely specific. So, for example, so these owls like to nest in very tall trees, like elm trees, which are over 100 years old. And so they need old growth trees which of a sufficient height to nest in. And so, which is why, because of the destruction of these old growth trees, destruction of these forests, and the cutting down of these old trees, that this Blackest fish owl is endangered on the IUCN Red List. And so, this book is really interesting as it talks about not only about the author's findings, but also about the bird's specific habitat needs and of how the author uses that knowledge to develop a conservation plan for that bird based on the bird's habitat. And so I would recommend this book very strongly because as it talks about how the life of a field biologist actually is.
Links to many of the birds that Maitreya talks about and also this book is provided in the show notes section of this episode. Bird Podcast is produced by Ullas Anand and Echo Edu. Editing by Tamanna Atreya. Thank you for listening to us. For now, this is me, Shobha Narayan, signing off.